This is what I do at Reckless Creatives Podcast. I never prepare.
That's okay. That's
It's
okay.
more organic when you don't prepare.
What? I'm Jeannie Follett-Bowerman.
And I'm Kira Duggan.
And you are listening to The Story Will Save You.
I've lived a kind of wild and varied life since I was a tiny human. And I remember I was doing a summer stock production of Hamlet, and Ophelia, I was telling her a story to try and relate to something that they had talked about. And it was a real story about my childhood where I was riding elephants and like checking on the tigers and the magicians. And she looks at me and she's like, if it were anybody else but you, I would know it was a lie. and and my husband, I think, thought it was like just like I'd kind of made it up for a while. And then he went through some photos last year, just kind of like cleaning up boxes of photos. And he found all of the photos of me riding elephants and walking across that stage. And he's like, oh, you were serious. I was like, did you think I was lying to you? But yeah, so it's been a wild ride getting to here.
But also too, like that he married somebody he thought was lying.
I don't think he thought I was lying. I think he thought I was exaggerating, that I was because I was 4 and there is a photo of me when I was 4, just like hands up, like little, like, yay, no like trainers on the elephant, just me walking around with the elephant. And he was like, no, there's no way. And I'm like, well, I mean, it was Nevada. It was show business. There's a whole lot of less, there's not a lot of regulation at that time. So
I think it's very clear here, Erin, that we don't even need to read your bio. Ask
a question and I'll talk.
That's right. This is meet Erin Hemenway, the woman who rode elephants at age 4.
Yes.
I want to give you guys a little backstory before we jump into questions with Erin. I met Erin on when X was Twitter, like 1,000 years ago. She was a screenwriter at that time. And then at some point, so we'll get into talking about transitioning to novel writing, but also novel writing, also became a mother, had cancer, now self-published author. And I'm going to hold up the book. You guys can't see it because we're not on YouTube, but
it's pretty.
It's called The Night Before Christmas. Yes. And we're going to let Erin tell you more about it. But it is not like it was the night before Christmas and all through the house. It's not that. So don't go there. It is not your
grandma's Christmas.
It's not the grandma's Christmas. And are there any elephants in it? Because you have to write a book now that has like baby elephants.
Okay. So fun fact, my keyword when I get stuck when I'm writing is elephant.
Really?
Instead of putting like hashtags or like putting a name placeholder, if I get to a place and I need a better word or haven't come up with it yet, I write the word elephant in all caps and then just keep writing. And then in my first revision, I go back and word search elephant and fix it.
That's my God, smart. I love that.
That is so smart.
If I do write a story with elephants, I'm going to find a different word like skyscraper because elephant is my keyword right now.
Yeah, you have to do a shorter word than
different.
Skyscraper. But that's a great idea to just use some word that you can search. I love that.
Yeah.
Because I would usually write something really smart here.
Right. And I'm terrified that what'll happen is that in my glazed editing process, because I've read it so many times, I'll completely miss that. And it'll end up in publication because I missed it. So I chose to write it in bold capital letters, a word that really doesn't have any business being in that particular story. That was my trick.
That's so smart because you can search it. When I write, I just highlight areas I need to go back to, but then that leads to me just having to mindlessly scroll and hopefully spot it. You can't search for find my highlighted area. So that's very smart. Ooh, I'm gonna steal that.
See, we already learned something. We're just a couple minutes in.
During cancer, I had to come up with tricks that could help me finish the work. And that was one of them.
Yeah. I mean, we definitely want to talk about that, like juggling the health issues, but also there's a lot of people who are listening to us who, definitely have health issues too, but also are parents, and whether they're fathers or mothers and they're juggling. what I love about this conversation is all three of us started off screenwriting,
That's amazing.
right? And all three of us are moms, and all three of us are writing. Kira's written a couple novels already and been published. I have not been published yet. I'm trying to do this.
Gotta do your 5 a.m.
thing.
writers club. Jeannie and I have tried to do accountability check-ins like a couple different times, and we just fail. We never do it. We never check in with each other.
We can't even check in with each other, let alone write.
So I found an accountability. I can't talk, so sometimes I'm going to trip over my own words. Accountability partner in one of the writers groups that I made. She doesn't live anywhere near me. She lives in Texas, and we just meet, and sometimes we just chat, and sometimes we actually spend that time, like set an egg timer and write, depending on the day. Most of the time we write or answer each other's questions, like how would you do this, or how would I do that? And I got lucky, I think, with her, because I've tried doing accountability before and failed miserably. But the new accountability partner that I found through Inkers Con was amazing, and we've been at it for almost 2 years now. We meet once a week on Wednesday, same time every day. Well, her time and my time is different, but it's the same time for us every week. And we meet for an hour or more if we need a little more time. And we just set that timer, and we either talk or we work.
I do have some friends who every once in a while, but it's not a scheduled thing, that they will hop on Zoom, but they do that. They just log on, they mute themselves. They might give themselves 5 minutes to say hi to each other in the beginning, and then that's it. Nobody can talk, mute themselves, and then they just work. And they do find that just knowing somebody's on the other side helpful to make them do the deed. But I feel like if Kira and I did that, we'd be like,
we would just talk the whole time.
Or we'd be like, oh, wait a second, I just need to edit this article for Pipeline Artists. Or I just need to, Kira would be like, oh, I just need to get back to this submission person with a question. Like, I feel like we would end up working.
We would just work. Or talking. We would just chat too. Like we can chat for 5 minutes. I feel like that just wouldn't happen.
We've totally done that, where we chatted for like a whole hour, just because she needed a vent or I needed a vent about life or whatever, because she's a mom too. I don't mind that. I think one of the things that I like about having that scheduled time is that it requires me to, when I'm not in that particular meeting, like, oh, I have a meeting on Wednesday, I should probably get a little work done in my story so that I can say, hey, I've accomplished something. That was my motivation, because it took me years to get to that point, because it was like, when I feel motivated, I'm a very mood-driven writer. Like, if I don't feel like it, it's not happening. And I think there's a disservice in that you must write every day. Like, most of us cannot do that. There's very, very few of us that have that sort of privilege. I think that does us disservice. But having someone that's on the other side is like, did you write today? Not today, but I worked on the administrative side of it, or I did a social media reel for, like, trying to constantly build the business side of authorship, which is I think a lot of writers, and myself included, like, I hate this part of it. I don't want to be a marketeer, and I don't want to be a social media manager, and I don't want to be a publisher, or all of these things. But I think that even my friends that are traditionally published, they've been like, yeah, I have to do all of the social stuff, because unless you're one of the top tier for the big five, they don't give you as much support as you think they do. So you have to really hustle anyways.
Is that part of why you decided to self-publish?
Yeah, because I was going to have to do the work one way or another to make sure that I got out there. I mean, every once in a while, somebody will get really, really lucky, and they'll be able to get that first book and spin it into a series or a career. But it's very rare now. They're very picky about who, like, they've went before Congress and talked about that, how when they were trying to do that merger between, to go from 5 to 4. They're going to pick a solid bet. They're going to pick a celebrity bio. They're going to pick a biopic, or an established author that's been writing for 30 years and has a guaranteed million sales. It's very hard for an unknown author, even if they do get that get that publishing support, it's still, you lose a lot of control. You don't have say in the cover design. If there's an error in the book, you can't fix it. You're like, it's like, my hands are tied. I can't do anything. And it's gone to, however many countries it's gone to. So a lot of that, I studied for about a year after I'd finished. So I wrote the first draft in 2020 during chemotherapy. I was talking into my phone.
Ugh.
And then I didn't touch it for almost a year after that because I wrote a book. What am I going to do with it? But in 2022, I started kind of researching how can I make this better. I started the editing process with a professional. And by the end of the year, I felt like I had an okay draft. And then I went and did another draft. And then 2023, I spent all of that year really polishing it. I wrote the second book. And then in 24, I spent the entire year really, really, really learning publishing. I'd been doing that for 22 and 23. I was taking classes, joining masterminds, watching successful authors and studying what they were doing and seeing how I could do it. Did I do it to the scale that some of them did? No, but I think the average self-published author doesn't sell 100 copies, and I sold more than that in the first 2 weeks. So
wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, so I'm like, by that measurement, I'm doing good. Like, I'm not on the New York Times bestseller list. I'm not on the USA Today bestseller list, but I'm doing okay, and I feel confident in where I'm at, and I have a plan to grow it. I'm trying to get an audiobook done this year for it because I've had people ask for that. I'm like, well, yeah, accessibility is a good thing, so let's see if I can make it happen.
We actually did interview somebody who is an audiobook narrator.
Wonderful.
On the podcast. Yeah. So we'll drop that link in the show notes, everybody.
Okay.
So let's back up a little bit.
Yeah.
And before we do the deep, or maybe we could continue on with self-publishing, but deciding to go from screenwriting to novel writing, was that a difficult decision for you, or are you still screenwriting? And was this book, The Night Before Christmas, was it a script first, or did it start as a book first?
Yes to all of that. So
I forgot what I asked.
Well, I'm going to kind of probably jump around a tiny bit, but
jump everywhere you want.
Before I decided to kind of pursue novel writing, I was very much into the screenwriting. I had written kind of this like post-apocalyptic sci-fi adventure Western that I had read at Seattle International Film Festival. They did, I don't know if they still do it, but at the time they were doing a series called First Draft. And professional actors would come in and read it for an audience, and then the audience would give the screenwriter feedback. And one of the things that I constantly got from that script was, this feels like a much bigger world. Because it had actually started out as a short film that we did actually make. We had produced that short film. We want more. This feels like a scene out of a film. So I wrote the screenplay, and then people were like, we want more. I'm like, what if I took the screenplay and used it as an outline for a novel? And so that was my first attempt at novel writing. That's actually where I came to New York and met you. That was the book that I brought to New York to pitch to agents. And I got 7 requests for it, and it didn't come out with a publication contract. So I was like, okay, let's keep working. Let's keep going. And I would do screenwriting, and I would kind of dabble in the novel writing, but I kind of sort of switched gears and really started aiming at novel writing more. This one, forever ago, there had been like an HBO fellowship that needed, they wanted like a TV show, and they wanted the Bible, the outline of the Bible, and then the pilot. And so I had written one that took place at a movie theater that I felt was a comedy, like this kind of like The Office, but at a movie theater. And that was the original concept for it. And I didn't get that particular fellowship, probably because I didn't put as much effort into that script as I could have. I think I wrote it in like 4 days.
Wow. Impressive.
And I was like, oh my God, I have a deadline. I must get this done. So it didn't get the polished attention it needed. And then it went into a drawer and I never saw it again. And then as this one started to kind of form in my mind, the first idea that I had was like, well, what if Mrs. Claus was naughty? And what if she had nachos and margaritas with somebody and then trapped them in a time loop? And I don't know why the two stories connected, because they're so very different from the screenplay that I had pitched to HBO and to what it is now. They're so different, because the other one wasn't even remotely a Christmas story. The really the main basis is that it was at a movie theater. That's the real big connection. Some of the characters I kept and saved, but a lot of it was just it grew from that one initial concept. Like if it's Christmas and we've got a Scrooge McDuck and we've got Mrs. Claus causing all kinds of trouble, how does that grow? And that was where this story came from. It was a nano project for me, mostly to, again, get through chemo, because I wanted magic. I needed something that felt joyful and hopeful. Like my family was amazing, but there's just, you need purpose. And if you don't have that purpose, you really start to go down that dark path real fast. So I started writing this story during that time, like literally laying on the bed after chemotherapy, because I couldn't sit in front of a computer, and I couldn't hold a pen and paper. So I was like just talking into my phone, into a Google Doc, and that was the first draft of this story.
I can't even.
That was going to be one of my questions, was like, when you're going through chemotherapy and you're feeling so sick, like how did you have the energy to do that? But it sounds like it was just like you just needed something.
You gotta, I mean, you can't sleep all the time and you can't watch TV all the time, and the screens would eventually get to the point where they'd give me headaches or make me sick. So I spent a lot of time literally, and it was COVID at the time too. So I was also homeschooling my oldest, who was in first grade, and the baby was about 7 months old when I got my diagnosis.
Oh my goodness.
So we were all kind of at the house going a bit stir crazy. And, you know, if the baby was napping and the first grader was in her little Zoom class, I was like, well, I can't really sleep because if I do and the baby cries or something, it's going to be harder for me to get up. So I would lay in the bed with one ear on the first grader and then talk into the phone. I didn't really have the energy. I just knew that I didn't have a choice to, like, I couldn't truly lay down. So this was kind of a way to keep my mind occupied.
Wow.
I can't even imagine with all the stress that all of that entails. I mean, just having kids home from COVID lockdowns was too much for a lot of people to write. But on top of that, like I just, oh, God bless you. I can't imagine.
It was how I found my magic, because I really needed it. Like that year was dark for a lot of reasons for a lot of people. And I was like, I can't go out and hike and see the majesty of the world. I can't go camp like a lot of people did. I mean, a lot of people were like, hey, road trip. I'm like, I can't do that. So this is how I did that.
I also think that it's a very different skill set to dictate a novel than to type it. Like, I'm not sure that I could do that. Like,
don't get me wrong, it was a rough draft. I mean, think about the number of times you've been like, hey, Alexa, or hey, Siri, and you're like, no, that nobody said avocado. Why? Like, so there was definitely that first pass when I did finally go back through the editing process, was like, oh no, okay, this is going to be some work to fix it. So it wasn't a polished draft by any stretch of the imagination. There was periods missing and commas missing. And one of the things that I did have to accept was that in the dialogue, it was hard to explain to it. Like, you can be like, when you're dictating to a computer, it's a lot easier for it to do like standard punctuation, like period, exclamation point, question mark. But you're like, I need quotations. And it's like, it'll write the word quotation, but it wouldn't do that. So I just accepted that it wasn't going to do it. And then I had to go in and put every single quotation back when I was able to sit at a computer.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, I've dictated ideas and thoughts. Like, if I'm out for a run or walking the dog and I have an idea, I'll usually text it to myself. But then I lose the text. Like, they're going back. I've got all these great ideas, like, years worth of text message, great ideas, but I have no idea. It's like, I don't know why I don't use the note feature in my phone, which everything would be in one place.
But I have like 100 notes that sometimes I'm like, oh yeah, that was a great idea. It's like 4 years old.
Yeah. Too late.
Oh, well.
Yeah. Crazy.
It happens.
So this one, the last one you said you had pitched at, I know you were at Writer's Digest conference with me, and that's where you pitched it. This one, did you pitch it at all, or did you just go straight to, I'm going to just self-publish this?
No, I did pitch. I went through the query tracker, and I did all of like the things of looking at the agents and saying who was looking for. Mine is challenging because I'm not great at pinning down genre. So I'm not always like great at picking an agent that they'll say like, I'm open to fantasy, and what they mean is they're looking for something that's like Sarah J. Maas, and I'm like, that's not this. Or I'm looking for like cozy romance, and I'm like, yeah, that's what this. And they're like, no, we need something that's like the book lover ones that it's like
Emily Henry.
Yeah, that one, Lauren Henry. I'm like, I can't remember her name right now. Like that's not real. That's really not what this is either. It's not really an enemies to lover thing. Like, it's got a couple of different things. It crosses a couple of different genres, and that was a challenge for me to pick agents. And so the feedback that I got was, I really like this concept. I really like this story, but I can't right now. And I understand that, like, from my film time and trying to sell movies, like, they're making a salad, and if they've already got their tomatoes, they don't need you. If you're an orange and they are making, a zesty salad, you're probably out. Like, it's just I try to remember that it's not always me, it's not always the writing. Just especially since I got so many requests the last time. I think I had a hard time like whittling down what the genre was for people in the pitch process.
Could you briefly
pitch the story? I know you touched upon elements of it, but just to give whoever's listening an overview of what the story's about.
That Mrs. Claus traps a Scroogey FBI agent in a time loop to help her rediscover the magic of Christmas. It's got a couple of elements from other time travel movies and Christmas movies. Definitely got Groundhog Day vibes. Definitely got It's a Wonderful Life vibes. And she talks about those a couple of times once she recognizes that she's in a time loop. But I really wanted it to be kind of fun and sassy, more of a Netflix Christmas movie than a Hallmark Christmas movie. A book, not movie. See what I did there?
Yeah, that's the screenwriting to book transition there.
It's hard to switch back and forth when I try to talk about that stuff. But yeah, I wanted something that would be fun and lighthearted enough, because Christmas can be challenging for a lot of people. It's not always joyful for everyone. Even if maybe you've gone through years and like Christmas was your favorite time ever, and then you go through some trauma and now you hate Christmas. And that's what this character does. She's experienced some trauma that's off the page. You don't really see it. You get hints of it until she talks about it more at the end of Act 2. But I really wanted people who don't always love Christmas to be able to enjoy it, and then people who really love Christmas to also be able to enjoy it. So it's got the balance for both.
And I do think describing it from that perspective of Hallmark versus Netflix, even though it's a book, still helps people understand the tone, that and an expectation. So I'm still a big fan of novelists using movies and TV shows and that kind of stuff as a way, because everybody's familiar with that stuff.
We all watch movies and we all understand that concept, I think.
Yeah. Okay. So something that I want to touch on, you mentioned about all the requests you got from the other book pitching in person compared to the reactions you get when you're pitching online. I know a lot of people are not fans of conference related pitching events because they think it's pay to play. it's expensive to go to a conference. You've got to pay for a hotel room, sometimes a flight, blah, blah, blah. There's a lot more money involved in the conference experience. But personally, I love that you can see the agent you're talking to, you get a spidey sense about them. I think your results speak to that because you are very warm personally and in person. And I could see why people would be like, oh yeah, I'm really excited to read this. Like, I feel like sometimes it's easier to make that connection at an event, but at the same time, I watch people leave these events with tons of requests, and a lot of the times nothing comes out of it.
Yeah.
And I think that I would argue that that's okay because you're still learning to pitch, you're learning to talk about your story, you're meeting people, you're making connections, and maybe you would get a revise and resubmit. You never know. And when you're pitching, I think the challenge of pitching with a query letter and not having that personal aspect to it is not having that personal aspect to it.
Yeah, it's hard to convey personality like in an email. It's really, really challenging. And I think that I do come into a space with a lot of energy. And so that's a really inviting energy that I'm not trying. It's just the energy that I bring to the space, that it's kind of like, hey, I'm friendly and I would like to be your friend, not just your business partner. And talking to them about a story that I'm excited about, it's also difficult to convey excitement through an email. Like you can, I see those like, look at this amazing query letter and it got 100 requests for it. I'm like, did it turn into a book?
Yeah.
It's also
there's such into a book. It's an amazing query letter, but I have questions.
There's such a balance to be struck too, because that some agents and editors just want to read it, get the story, see if they like it or not. And sometimes writers will really try to infuse their query letters with so much personality that it's almost too much and over the top, and it's overdone. And some agents don't like that. So it's like sometimes it's just a crapshoot when it's just an email. You don't know what they're going to respond to.
Yeah.
I'm in the process of writing a grant. My local community has an arts grant that is for local artists, and I'm trying to get that for the audiobook so that I don't have to be out all of that funding. And one of the wonderful things that she does is she does a walkthrough of the application, but she also talks about the panel. And I felt like it was a really interesting conversation to have, because I feel like that's true for people that are on the agent side. You don't always know, what she said was that sometimes the panels tend to be a little bit more conservative and they want a very professional, like straightforward bullet point kind of like summary of what you plan to do. And sometimes they want all the personality, and it's impossible to know until you're submitting what you're submitting to.
But those grants can be a good thing. I mean, sometimes they really work out. I don't know if you guys have ever heard the movie Frozen River. It was in Sundance. I don't know what year it was, but it started off as a short film, and she used the short, she put it in some festivals. She used the short as a proof of concept, applied for grants, got the money to do the feature film. The feature ended up winning Sundance Grand Jury Prize, and she got nominated for an Oscar.
Is that the one with Melissa?
Yes.
Liu?
Courtney Hunt. Courtney Hunt was the writer-director, and she's my neighbor.
That's amazing. I've met Melissa Leo. So there's another filmmaker that's now in Los Angeles that Susie, I'm going to forget her last name, so I won't say it because I will forget it. She made a short film called Dear Lemon Lima, and it got the same thing. It went from a short film to the concept to the feature, and Melissa Leo was on that film.
Yeah.
So
there's so many fundraising opportunities out there. So before we go, I don't want to go off on that tangent, but with your self-published book, was it like, for all the people out there listening who might want to try self-publishing, I'll give a little plug. We have a Symposium, amazing, very robust self-publishing session that Karen Richardson did. And oh my God, I learned so much from it. I can't believe she packed all that information to 2 hours. It was like crazy. But anyway, and for only $35, you can get that. But was it when it was one thing to study it and to understand, okay, I'm supposed to do this, 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 and this. It's another thing to do it.
Yes.
So now that you've done it, what do you wish you could go back and tell the person who hadn't done it yet? Like either to mentally prepare yourself for it or to be like, you know what, you need to be a little bit more organized, girl. You need to do this, 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 or you know what, maybe it's better to just not know.
I think making sure you have a real good strategic plan. I know that everybody says that, but I don't think anybody really understands like what that looks like. It doesn't necessarily mean do all the things in one day. It means, okay, if you're going to order print copies, you need to give yourself 3 to 6 weeks in advance before an event, or you're going to do what I did, which was panic because both Amazon and Ingram Spark were going to deliver the copies a week after my event. So I ended up having to spend more money to get a local print shop to print them. So and that was just me. I wanted to do a book launch event locally. And so I did do one of those, but that's not necessarily everybody needs to do that. I just personally wanted to do that to kind of help build buzz around it, at least locally. So having a real good strategic plan in place, knowing how long it's going to take to do something. So like if you do order prints, it's going to take you, give yourself 6 weeks, because if you give yourself 3 weeks and on week 4, they're not there, you want that buffer room. Understanding that each of the platforms has different rules and does different things. So if you're going to publish with just Amazon, you don't have to really worry so much about the others. But if you're going to publish wide, which is what I did, you need to understand the difference between Ingram Sparks and Amazon and Draft to Digital and how each of them interact. If you want to, you can publish on each of those platforms, but you have to be careful about when you approve the print or the draft that they've done, because I made the mistake of approving the one on Ingram Spark before I had finished the one on Amazon. So Ingram, because it's a wide distributor, think of it like international distribution. That's what they do. They are the ones that are trusted by libraries and bookstores, both domestically and internationally. So if you've got it published through them, anyone, anywhere in the world can buy it. If their store doesn't have it, they can request it. If you don't, if you're trying to publish through Amazon so that you can like retain some more money, because you're going to see a lot less money publishing through Ingram Spark than Amazon, make sure you get your Amazon stuff first, because Ingram Spark will then take it and distribute it to Amazon and other places. And if they're the first one to publish, Amazon's like, my hands are tied. They published it, even though it's your book. So that was one of the, there was lots of things that I didn't think about because I knew that I needed to go on both, but I didn't go, oh no, Amazon needs their file first. Barnes & Noble needs their file first. Otherwise, Ingram Spark claims it, and I no longer have the right to publish my own book on their platform because it's already been published. The only way around that is to either publish before your publish date or use another, what's called an ISBN number, which is basically the social security number for your book. So they're not inexpensive to get. I bought them in a 10-pack, I think, which was a little bit more expensive than if I bought just one at a time. But you need one for an ebook. You need one for, like I could do a whole seminar on self-publishing. So just making sure you have a plan, making sure you understand what the platforms do, understanding that it's okay if you're not on all of those platforms because you're not ready to. It's okay to just do Amazon first while you're figuring it out. I would prefer if there was a different platform, but it is what we have. It's the largest bookseller in the world. So not being on Amazon is only going to hurt yourself. So knowing that was hard for me.
That's just a really good tip, though, because I feel like that is just not common knowledge. Like, how would people know that, that you like, that's just not common knowledge. So I think that's a really good piece of advice for anyone who does want to self-publish.
And we could have you do a self-published seminar for Symposium, because we like to have the same topic covered by different people, because there's different people have different experiences, and I don't know, like it's just like you have how many cookbooks you have,
Right.
like Italian cookbooks. I've got a bunch of them, but there's different recipes in each one, and
Yep.
different styles. Yeah, I love this, and I love that. Okay, so quick marketing tips. Like now you're a business, now you're a publisher. So quick little marketing tips that people might not have tried.
I think it's okay. I think people forget that they can, when they've got a product to sell, that places like your local news station, they need content. And so if you send a press release to the local news station, this is one of the reasons I did an event. Was I had an event, I put it at a movie theater. We have this lovely little like independent theater called the Magic Lantern Theater. It's not particularly big. It usually does independent films or like old movies that have been out of theaters for a while. So that's where I did my event. And then I sent out a press release and I sent it to every newspaper and I sent it to every news station. And one news station got back to me and was like, "Hey, we'd like you to come to our morning show and talk about your book." So then I had footage of me at a news, like being interviewed by this multi-million-dollar news anchor. I mean, she's not a multi-million dollar, but the news station is.
Right.
And it just lends credibility to what you're doing. Every time you do a podcast, every time you do a interview with anybody, it's content for you, but it's content for them. And because other content creators need them, it's okay to reach out to them. Like, be careful how you do it. Don't be like, "My book is the best thing, and if you don't put me on your air, you're dumb." Like, that's not. Let's be nice. You can be excited about what you're doing on, like what you're working on, but like make sure that you're professional about it and you're reaching out. I went to get ARC readers. I made this little like flyer and I put it up at coffee shops with a QR code all around my city with the original blurb, and at libraries. So all of the libraries, about 15 different coffee shops, had ARC reader signups on the community boards for people to just like be one of my initial. I don't know how many of the people that joined my ARC community were from that or they were from social media, one of the two. Because social media is the most obvious. Like, it's the one that costs the least amount of money, but it costs the most amount of time. So trying to fold that other stuff in there, traditional media hasn't gone away, and it's a good way to lend credibility to what you're trying to accomplish. And you can be like, "Look at me, I'm in the news." I did a couple of pop-up events. That's one of the reasons I ordered paperbacks of my books. There's a craft, it's a vendor mall, but it's particularly tiny, and they do this like holiday after hour shopping stuff. And so they had me as their exclusive author signing. And I just stood there in the middle of just Christmas everywhere around me and was signing books, and they're eating food and drinking wine, and like people would come over. And what was great is because once you'd sign the book, they can't set it down and be like, "Oh, I changed my mind."
Right.
You've already autographed it for them. They're like, "No, I have to buy this," which was kind of nice. But I sold out of the books that I brought there. And so you can sell books in other ways than just online. It doesn't have to be paperback and EPUB. I've actually sold more paperbacks than I've sold ebooks for unknown reasons. It's just the way it worked out. I'm surprised by that, but I've heard a lot of authors, that self-published authors, say they make more money doing craft fairs than they do online. So they'll go and they'll say, like, make sure you're not paying, an arm and a leg for a table, because if you're paying $400 for a table and you make $100, clearly not a good return on your investment. But $30 for a table and you make $100, that's a good return. So.
And also people get to meet you, and then they can be like, "Oh my God, I met this really cool author. I really like her." And then they might check out your
Right.
book.
And I one of the things I love about this, it's advertising. This is advertising. Anytime I hand it to somebody, anytime I'm carrying it around, people are constantly like, "What are you reading?" I'm like, "Actually, I wrote it." And then it starts a conversation.
But I think that even goes back to talking about like pitching your book in person versus sending it through emails. There is that personal connection. If someone sees you at a real life event or they see you on a morning show, it does give you that kind of credibility and more personal connection, because there are so many authors promoting their work on social media that you just become like another thing to scroll past.
Right.
So, especially as a self-published author, because anyone can self-publish, I think having that credibility is so important. And it sounds like you really did a great job at that. So
Thank you. I know that there's a stigma with self-publishing still, and we're working on, I think the industry, the self-publishing industry is working on that, because we do know that. We know that people are like, I wrote a book and I throw it on Amazon, I don't care. I'm like, you're hurting all of us when you do that.
Yeah.
Could you please go through the process of hiring an editor and a book cover artist? Could
Right.
you get your ISBN number at the very least from the actual place and not just Amazon? That's another like just tip real quick. Don't get your ISBN through Ingram Spark or Amazon. Get it through Bowker, because then you own it. And then it changes how bookstores will talk to you. So if you got it, that's my little, make sure you do that one thing.
Have you been able to get into the libraries?
Yes, I did. My local library. I don't know if I'm every library, but my local library has it on their ebook. Washington State has some really excellent literary programs, and I submitted for one of them, and it put my book available to all of the libraries, but specifically to the Spokane Library. So there's
awesome.
always at least one person that's like trying to get it. So I'm like,
That's
yay!
exciting.
There's a small little wait list, and it felt good.
Yes. So one other thing I want to mention, because lately with social media, it's in a little bit of an upheaval right now. People are kind of floundering and going everywhere and lost and leaving places and trying to start up in new places and rebuilding communities. I think right now is a perfect example of why an email newsletter list is really important, because social changes and people leave. And like Kira was just saying, everybody's talking about, oh, my books come out. And you just get inundated with all these new books you can't possibly, and you just scroll by. It's like 2 seconds, you scroll by. But if you have a way to capture emails on your website, that email newsletter list is not going anywhere. Social media can do whatever it wants to do, but that's a community you're in control of.
And you own it.
So talk about how,
thing.
So if you could talk about how you built your newsletter list. And
my newsletter is growing. It's small, but it's mighty. But I started out just organically inviting people to the newsletter. I asked my ARC readers. I had this little like Google form that I had them fill out to answer questions like what kind of genres do you read? How long does it take you to read a book that's approximately 75,000 words? My book is like 72,000, but like 75,000. How long does it take you to read that? Do you promise not to feed it into generative software? That was a couple of things. And then the last one was, do you want to sign up for my newsletter or just be an ARC reader? I gave them the option of one or two. Most of them said both, that they want to be both an ARC reader and a newsletter. I was lucky that I am in a couple of different writing communities locally to me, but it took me a real long time to find them. Like, I didn't know that they existed for about 5 years. So I just in the last 2 years have really found them and found a place where I feel, I have people that understand what I'm doing, and I can talk to them about writing. I can talk to them about publishing. I can talk to them about marketing. I can ask questions when I'm stuck, and I can give feedback when they're stuck. That really helped me, I think, more than anything, finish what I was doing, because again, accountability. So some of those people came onto my newsletter just because they wanted to support me. So I had some of my initial subscribers were my community members that were like, no, I believe in you and I want to support you. And then I got more through both my website, through talking about it on social media. That's kind of my goal this year, is to grow my newsletter, because I'm not leaving any of the social media platforms anytime soon at the moment. That's my husband's like, oh, I'm mad at this one. I'm like, okay, today, tomorrow, we're going to be mad at somebody for whatever. I don't want to leave the communities that I've built yet. Like we kind of talked about earlier, I really have tried to cultivate some communities. They're, again, small but mighty. I'm really proud of the work that I've done with these communities, and I don't want to let go of them yet, but I would like to encourage them to join my newsletter.
Mm-hmm.
I only email once a month, talk about writing, talk about life. And then if I have like the book coming out, I'll probably do 2 in a month where I'm like, here's this extra special thing. It is a challenge, I think, to grow a newsletter, but that's why I'm working on the lead magnet. Again, learning the marketing. You kind of like, what is a lead magnet? It's a free thing that you give away, and they go, in exchange for this free thing, they give you their email address, and now you have this constant contact with this person. So I'm working on developing more of that to grow it, but I really, really believe that it's the only way that any of us are going to be able to like hold on to our communities is through the others.
I also think it's really tough now because every time you see something, it's like subscribe, but not a free subscription to a newsletter. Everybody wants $5 a month, or, you know, it's like, how many newsletters can we sign up for that cost us money? You know? So I really appreciate the people who are like, yeah, just sign up for my newsletter. Like, I'm not going to charge you anything.
If I had a Patreon, that would be one thing, but that's a different platform to me. Like a newsletter to me, I don't know. It's not a newspaper. Like I understand that it takes work to craft it, but it's not a newspaper. I'm not subscribing to the newspaper to get the world news. I'm sharing my very specific worldview with you. I shouldn't be charging you for that.
Right.
But that's just my 2 cents.
Yeah. I also am I've never seen any authors do it. A lot of times when you sign up for, like, you buy something and it asks, like, do you want to get text messages or whatever? I actually love that. Like
the text messages?
Yes, because it's like, yeah, I just see it. I just, 99.9% of the time, I'm just like, yeah, whatever. I just like ignore it. But to me, my email inbox is like crazy. And sometimes a text message is just like this quick little thing. And like, so like, even if you set up a newsletter where people give you permission to text them, and you could just text, hey, really excited, book coming out on X date, pre-order now, and that's it. Like, I've never really seen authors taking advantage of that yet.
I think we're still learning how to do it. I know that like on social media, they've got the new, like, if you comment a specific word, then you can send them a link or a private message. But that I think is better, because I've done that where I'm like, I'll comment, soup, and see what they have to say about soup. No big deal. And then I don't click the link because I'm like, oh God, another link to click. But if it comes in a text message and I recognize it, that is key.
Yeah.
I recognize it. I'm like, yes, I will absolutely look at that. Okay. Delete if I don't care, but it's a good marketing tool. I don't think a lot of authors have figured out how to use it without it feeling like spam yet.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's also like a challenge with, as everybody knows, social media, the algorithms are constantly changing. And then I heard the other day, like, when you post on, you post on Instagram, you cannot put a link in the post, right? But on Threads, you can put a link in the post. Well, then I learned the other day that if you put a link in the post, it drops your visibility. So what a lot of people do is they'll say in the post, link in the comments, and then the next thread. And so then they reply to their own post on Threads with the link. So
yes.
And it's like, oh my God, if I have to learn all this crap, I'm going to just, my head's going to explode.
And it changes all the time. So
all the time.
I think one of the best things to do is do what you can, and then just be consistent about it. That is like, consistency is going to be your best friend, because that'll increase your visibility to begin with. And then don't worry about the ever-changing landscape. Like, learn what you can, but it's okay. It's okay if you don't know it all, because I don't.
And I think the other reason people, when they post and they put those things like comment with whatever word to get, I think it's not just so that they can send them this DM with a link. I think it's also so that if a bunch of people are commenting it, it brings it up in the feed.
Yes,
so they're looking for ways to get people to comment. And it's like, ugh, really?
It's one of the reasons that it's actually okay, because the algorithm can't tell, for whatever reason, don't tell the the minions, but the algorithm can't actually tell the difference between when you comment on your post and when someone else comments on your post. That's one of the reasons that you'll see people like their own post and then make a comment and be the first comment and usually pin that comment, whether it's the link or something else. And fun fact, you can post a link on your story, but you have to do it with a sticker.
Oh my God, I can't.
It's hard too, especially for writers, because I feel like writing itself takes so much brain power and time that to be like, oh, well, you also have to do all the social media stuff. It's like, I'd rather be actually putting the work into my book than my social media. But so I found myself going in waves, whereas like when I was drafting, I'd be like completely just absent from social media. And then when the book was coming out, I would be like all over my social media. But that doesn't work either because you can't, like you said, you have to be consistent. So you can't be like, woohoo, here I am, and then like ghost everyone when
I know I blew you all up for 3 months.
Unless you're like a really established author, then you can do whatever you want. I feel like at this stage, if you like people know you, they follow your books, fine. But if you're trying to like gain that following, it's really hard.
It is. JD Barker, who I met at Writer's Digest forever ago. It feels like forever ago. But he's actually really, really good at his social media game. I don't know how he manages it. I'm almost positive he does it himself. But he's traditionally published. And I like watching what he does because he constantly is posting when people do reviews of his work, inviting people to do the stuff, but he's pretty consistent about it. I am trying to find that balance between posting on social media consistently and working on my work more. And I think one of the best things that an author or any creative can do is like, I have buckets of things that need to get done. These are my administrative tasks. These are my creative tasks. And then I can't remember what this last one was, but
family.
Well, but like it's part of like the work process. So this one isn't necessarily family. These are really more about the work process buckets. And then each bucket is a hat. And I'm wearing my administrative hat for 2 hours. And then I'm going to take it off. And then I'm going to take a small break. I'm going to walk away from the computer for 5 minutes, get some food, go to the bathroom, do what I need to do. Then I'm going to come back and I'm going to put on my creative hat. In whatever order you need to do that, it doesn't really matter. But I think that's better about the balancing. My favorite thing that I can do with social media is schedule the content in advance. Like I was very, very sick in December. I got the flu and I was sick for like 4.5 weeks, but I had already scheduled posts for most of December. And if I didn't have the post scheduled, I already had it in my phone, so I could just kind of upload it and do that. It looked like I was like, hey guys, it's Tuesday. What about tea? And I was like, I'm dying. I'm really dying today.
I had to do that when my son was born. I had a book coming out in April. He was born mid-February, and I'm pretty sure it was like 2 days after he was born was like the cover reveal and all this stuff. So I had to schedule everything because I was like, I'm gonna have a newborn. I'm not gonna be on social media. And that was and I had people reaching out being like, oh my God, I can't believe you're like so active on social media. I'm like, that's not me. That is not me right now.
Do you guys use a scheduling program software? Like for Pipeline, I use Buffer because it's got a lot of the different platforms and they keep adding new platforms, but there's positives and negatives. But do you schedule them individually on each platform?
I have been scheduling them individually on Instagram. TikTok, I don't have enough followers yet for it to let me do that stuff, and I'm hesitant to quite go into like full business mode on TikTok until it settles down and we know what's going on. Like it's not worth the effort to really put that in quite yet. But so Instagram, I schedule them on my own. Previously, I used Buffer. I've also been looking at Metricool, which is what I like about Metricool. I don't know if Buffer does this, but they give you kind of a feedback analysis on the performance of your posts, like how many likes you have, how many followers you've gained or lost, what posts perform the best. It'll break it down by gender as well, like age gaps. Metricool is a really amazing tool. I'm not paying for a premium. I'm just doing the free version of it. But I know that if you pay for the premium, you can schedule with them to post to all the different platforms.
And Buffer
that's
does
cool.
have analytics. I'm looking at it right now.
Yeah,
It'll tell you your followers, your impressions, your engagement rate.
that's amazing.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
does have some analytics.
When I get more consistent, I'll probably end up using a scheduling tool. I haven't yet. I did when I was doing fundraising for the films that I was doing, when I was doing the screenwriting and producing, and we were doing a lot of Kickstarter campaigns. There was just no way to constantly be posting about the campaign and not burn out without scheduling. So that's what I would do. And I used
Bless
Buffer at the time.
scheduling.
I used Canva. They have a scheduling feature.
Oh,
I
they
wouldn't
do.
necessarily. I only used it that one time. That kind of one spring was when I was scheduling. I haven't really done it since. I didn't do it before. I don't know if I would recommend Canva. It was a bit clunky. It got the job done, but I'm sure these other platforms you guys are mentioning are much more kind of user friendly and easy. But Canva has a you just have to like link your profiles and say when you wanted it, all that stuff, and it would just do it for you. So you do have to have the pro account for it though.
Yeah, I love the pro account for creating the content, and I create most of my content there. It saves me a lot of time. I used to spend hours in Photoshop, and I'm like, well, thank God for Canva.
I know.
So much
It's
easier.
cut down the time a lot, and I don't have to like create things from scratch all the time anymore. But I don't know if I would use. I don't know. I'd have to explore it and check it out.
Yeah.
It's all a bit hazy, so I'd have to revisit it to truly remember. But I remember thinking like it was a bit clunky, and I wasn't sure if I was doing it right, but it got me from point A to point B. So I was like, all right, that's
Yeah.
that. So it's an option.
So, Erin, do you see yourself ever going full circle back to screenwriting, or are you kind of got the publishing and the novel writing bug?
Yeah, I have a screenplay that I'm having a difficult time deciding which direction I want to go. If I want to go full screenwriter with it or full novel with it. That is it would be a cancer one. I feel that it has a lot of funny in it, but I think because it's cancer, people are like, is that really a comedy? Can you really call it a comedy? I'm like, I mean, comedy was the only way I got through cancer, so I hope so. I would like to do some more screenwriting again. It's such a different skill set that it takes a hot minute because that was probably the biggest challenge for me is going from screenwriting to novel writing. You need so much white space in a script. You need to basically you're giving the story and you're giving the key points and the dialogue, but you're not diving in for a page and a half about the colors of an eye or the taste and the smell. That is implied through the visual. So, and oftentimes it changes dramatically once the director has their hands on it. So it's really more of a blueprint for a house than it is the house itself. The book is the house. And so you have to pick out, the window dressings and the curtains and the carpets and the bedding. You have to pick all of those things out and describe them in detail. So that I think I would do screenwriting again. I would love to do screenwriting again. I would like to see this one become a movie eventually, or maybe book two, because Mrs. Claus makes she gets her own book the next time.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Is that the one that you just wrote?
Yeah, I finished it. Well, I'm still in the edit process, and then it actually goes to the editor in March. But it's going to be a lot of fun because Mrs. Claus gets into a decorating feud with both Santa and her Karen of a neighbor. She's real Mrs. Claus is real petty about it. Like trying really hard to keep up her Halloween decorations while still meeting the standards of Christmas. Even though she loves Christmas. It's her holiday. She absolutely loves it. And she's so mad at the neighbor that she's like, no, we're keeping the gargoyles. Like it's gonna be fun.
I like the idea of a petty Mrs. Claus.
Me too.
She's very petty.
I'm so petty, my kids call me Tom Petty.
Love it.
And where can people find you on social media?
I am predominantly on Instagram and TikTok under Erin.go.right. Hold on, Erin.go.right on all of the platforms. And then ErinGoWrite.com is my website where you can sign up for my newsletter. There's links to the book, both the ebook and the print book. You can also get it probably at your local library or definitely at a local bookshop.
And we will put all those links in the show notes.
Sweet.
Yay! So scroll on down, baby. The Story Will Save You is a Pipeline Artists original podcast. Like, subscribe, and follow us on social media at Pipeline Artists and at Book Pipeline. For more information, visit pipelineartist.com and bookpipeline.com, where we have contests for unpublished manuscripts as well as for published books that would make great adaptations for either film or television. Learn more about our efforts to help writers find publishing success on bookpipeline.com. Until next time, let the story save you.